I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, honestly. Bate and I had always been the picture of a stable, happy marriage. At least, that's what I told myself. We'd been together for 8 years, and up until recently, I genuinely believed we were solid. We had the usual ups and downs, but nothing that seemed out of the ordinary. She was a bit bitchy sometimes, probably more than a bit, and she liked to lie to cover her ass whenever she was caught in something. But I overlooked it. Because I loved her. Things started feeling weird maybe 6 months ago. She became more distant, less interested in spending time together. She'd come home late from work meetings, but I started noticing her phone was always hidden. She'd take it to the bathroom, lock her screen, and sometimes even delete texts. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I kept quiet, but I could feel the tension simmering beneath the surface. Then I started noticing little things, her scent changing, her phone buzzing at odd hours, her avoiding eye contact when I asked about her day. She'd snap at me more often, call me needy or paranoid if I pushed too hard. It was frustrating, but I told myself maybe she was just stressed or having a rough time. I didn't want to believe she'd cheat on me, not her. One night I was lying on the couch scrolling through some work emails when I caught a strange notification pop up on her phone. It was a message from someone named Eli saying, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Been thinking about last night." Just that little snippet made my stomach turn. I froze. Who the hell was Eli? I tried to brush it off, told myself it might be work-related or maybe some friend she was talking to, but I just knew deep down something was off. When I looked closer, I saw she'd been deleting messages from that contact more than once. That was the real tipping point. I stayed up all night watching her. The next day, I pretended everything was normal, but I started snooping more. Her email, her social media. I found out she'd been messaging Eli for months, talking about everything, her frustrations, her feelings, even about us. And I realized she had been lying to me about everything. I felt betrayed, but part of me still wanted to believe it was just some stupid fling. Until I found something even worse. Recordings, actually, of her sessions with her therapist. Yeah, her therapist. That's when it got surreal. Bates started seeing this therapist because she said she was having trouble feeling anything anymore. She told me it was just a way to get her emotional stability back. But during one of her sessions, I was able to listen in via a hidden recording I had secretly set up. The session recordings revealed something I wasn't ready for, something I never expected to find. The therapist was restoring her emotional intelligence, sure, but what I heard in those recordings wasn't therapy. It was a slow, calculated manipulation. The therapist was guiding her through affective transference, mimicking the kind of intimate bond that should only happen between lovers. It was like she was falling in love with her own therapist. The therapist was playing on her feelings, feeding her with emotional responses that weren't real. I could hear her voice trembling, her words soft and vulnerable, but I knew it wasn't her true feelings. It was like she was rehearsing a version of herself that I didn't even recognize. And in that process, she was cheating on me, on our marriage, on everything we had built. That's when I truly felt the blow. Not just betrayal, but a kind of betrayal of myself. She was pretending to work on her emotional health, but what she was really doing was reconnecting with someone else on a level I couldn't compete with. I felt anger boiling up inside, mixed with a profound sadness. How could someone I loved deeply do this to me? How could she lie so effortlessly? And the worst part, I knew I couldn't unhear those recordings. They were seared into my brain. I started questioning everything. Was I ever enough? Did she ever really love me? Or was I just holding on to something that was already gone? I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying her words, her voice, the therapist's voice, and the unsettling realization that she'd been slowly rebuilding herself with someone else's influence. That's when I knew I'd have to confront her. But I wasn't prepared for what was coming next. The morning after I discovered the recordings, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. My mind kept replaying her voice, the therapist's words, and that sickening feeling of betrayal. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew that whatever came out of that conversation was going to change everything. I waited until she came home from her therapy session, which I now suspected was more about her emotional reprogramming than actual healing. She walked in, wearing that fake smile she always used when she knew she was hiding something. I was sitting on the couch, phone in hand, feeling a mix of rage and heartbreak. She looked at me, trying to act normal, like I wasn't just sitting there with her secret exposed. "I need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She rolled her eyes, brushing past me. "What now? You're always accusing me of something. Just say it already." I took a deep breath. "Who is Eli?" I asked bluntly. Her face froze for a second, just a flicker, before she quickly composed herself. "Eli. What are you talking about?" She scoffed, trying to play innocent, but I wasn't falling for that scripted lie anymore. I pulled out my phone and played the recordings I had secretly saved. I pressed play and her face went blank as she recognized her own voice. "That's not what you think," she muttered, trying to cover her tracks. "It's just therapy. It's not what you think. You're asterisk crazy if you think I'm cheating or whatever you're implying." Her tone was bitchy, defensive, and angry. She was trying to dismiss it, but her face was pale and her hands trembled slightly. I couldn't believe how she was lying so easily, how she was trying to gaslight me, make me doubt what I'd heard. "Really? Therapy, that's what you call it? Listening to you talk to that therapist about how you're falling in love with her, how you're reconnecting emotionally with someone other than me, that's therapy bait." She shot me a venomous look. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're paranoid. I've been honest with you." She paused, voice rising. "You always think I'm cheating or lying, but I'm not. I'm just working on myself, and if you can't respect that, then maybe this isn't going anywhere." Her words stung worse than I expected. She acted like it was my fault, like I was some insecure idiot making accusations over nothing. But I knew better. I knew she'd been lying to me for months. All those late nights, all those secret texts, all that emotional upheaval. She was doing it with someone else and she was still trying to deny it. I told her I needed space, that I needed to think. I went to the guest room, shut the door, and sat there staring at the wall. I felt like I'd just been punched in the gut. I kept replaying the recordings, trying to find some way to make sense of it all. How long had she been doing this? How much of her therapy was real, and how much was just her rewriting her feelings, her reality? I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, her bitchy smirk, her lies. I felt a mixture of resentment and deep sadness. I loved her, but I couldn't ignore what I'd uncovered. I kept asking myself, is this worth fighting for? Or am I just fooling myself because I don't want to admit it's really over? In the days that followed, I started reading more about emotional infidelity, affective transference, and how therapists sometimes manipulate vulnerable patients into feeling bonded with them. I learned that what I had heard wasn't uncommon. Sometimes, therapists unknowingly or knowingly cross boundaries that should never be crossed. That realization made me even angrier. My wife had been vulnerable, and her therapist had taken advantage of that, feeding her feelings that weren't real. Just like that, she was reprogrammed, rewired to think she was in love with someone else. I knew I couldn't just ignore it anymore. I had to decide what to do, whether to try to fix things or walk away. But one thing was clear: I'd never been more hurt, more betrayed. And I knew that whatever happened next, my life had changed forever because I'd uncovered the truth. The next few days were a blur of intense emotions. I kept replaying everything: the recordings, her words, her bitchy dismissals, and I felt like I was spiraling. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and honestly, I started questioning my own sanity. Was I overreacting? Was I losing it? Or was this, in fact, the biggest betrayal I ever faced? I decided I needed to confront her again, but this time I was going in with a plan. I wanted answers, honest answers, because I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. I needed to understand what she was doing, why she was doing it, and how deep this whole thing went. She was at work when I got home that afternoon, and I took a deep breath before calling her. I told her to meet me in the living room. When she arrived, she looked annoyed, probably because she knew she was caught, or at least suspected I knew something. I didn't waste any time. "Bait," I said, voice cold but controlled. "We need to talk. I want to hear everything. About Eli, about your therapist, about your feelings. I want the truth. No more lies." Her eyes narrowed. "You're being ridiculous. I don't have to explain myself to you." "Oh, you're going to explain," I shot back. "Because I have recordings of your therapy sessions where you're basically falling in love with her. And I know about Eli, who you've been texting and lying about. So don't lie to me anymore." Her bitchy attitude shifted and I saw a flicker of panic in her eyes. She crossed her arms, trying to look defiant. "Fine, you want the truth. I've been going through a rough patch. I felt trapped and that therapist just made me feel like I mattered again. Eli is just a friend, not some lover. You're overreacting." I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. "You think that's an excuse? You're cheating on me with your therapist influence bait. You're lying to yourself and everyone else, and you've been hiding this for months." She spat out, "I don't owe you an explanation. You're just insecure, jealous, and controlling. You don't know what it's like to feel this way. I was trying to fix myself and you're making it impossible." That's when I felt the boiling rage. I stood up, voice rising. "You're lying. You never cared about fixing yourself. You were just looking for someone to fill the emotional void you created. You're a bitch bait and I'm sick of your lies." She looked like she was about to cry, but the anger in her eyes was just as intense. "You think you're so perfect, don't you? Well, maybe I don't want to be with someone who's so paranoid and possessive. Maybe I'm better off without you." Those words hit me like a punch. I'd always thought we had a future, that we were solid. But now I saw her for what she was: selfish, manipulative, and completely indifferent to how much she'd hurt me. I realized I couldn't fix this. Not anymore. That night, I packed a bag and left the house. I didn't go to a hotel or to stay somewhere permanent just yet. I just needed space, to breathe, to think, to get away from the toxicity. As I drove away, I looked back at the house, feeling a strange mix of relief and despair. I knew I had to make a decision, but I still wasn't sure what that would be. All I knew was that the woman I loved had betrayed me in ways I never thought possible, and my trust was shattered. In the days that followed, I started talking to friends, trying to process what had happened. Some told me I should just cut my losses and walk away. Others told me maybe I could fix this. But the truth was, I didn't trust her anymore. Not really. And I wasn't sure I wanted to stay and rebuild something that had been destroyed by lies and manipulation. What scared me most was how much I'd let it get this far, how I'd ignored the signs, how I'd convinced myself she was just stressed or busy. The reality was far worse. She had been emotionally unfaithful, and in doing so, had completely dismantled all the illusions I'd had about our life together. I felt like I was starting from scratch now, a broken man with a lot to figure out, and I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to trust again. The days after I left the house were the hardest. I stayed with a friend for a while because I just couldn't face going back to that empty, cold place. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her bitchy smirk, her lies, that voice from her therapy sessions, trying to convince herself she was doing the right thing. It felt like my entire world had flipped upside down overnight. I wasn't just hurt. I was angry, confused, and deeply betrayed. I kept replaying everything: the recordings, her words, her excuses. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much she'd been lying to herself, to me, and everyone around her. Her whole self-improvement thing was a giant cover-up for her emotional infidelity, and I couldn't wrap my head around how she'd let it get this far. How she'd be so callous as to keep lying even after I'd caught her. It was like she didn't even care that she was destroying us. One night, I finally sat down and looked at the recordings again, trying to piece together what her therapist had done. It was sickening. The therapist had been guiding her through affective transference sessions, mimicking intimacy, bonding, vulnerability, stuff that's supposed to happen between lovers, not between a patient and a therapist. I could hear the subtle manipulation, how her voice would tremble just enough, how her words were almost like rehearsed lines. It was obvious she was falling into it, losing herself. And I realized she'd been doing it all under the guise of personal growth. But this wasn't therapy. It was emotional entrapment. The therapist, intentionally or not, was playing on her vulnerabilities, creating a false sense of connection that she mistook for love. She was rewiring her feelings, rebuilding her trust in someone else, and doing it in a way that was designed to be convincing, intimate, and, most importantly, secret. When I listened, I felt a sick mixture of rage and sadness. How could she be so blind? How could she have let herself be pulled into that web? That night I made a decision. I couldn't stay in that house with her anymore. I couldn't pretend everything was okay when I knew the truth. I knew I had to end it for good, no matter how much I loved her. I started making plans, finding a place to go, figuring out what I needed to do to heal. I didn't want to be the guy who gets cheated on and just accepts it. I wanted justice, or at least some kind of closure. The next day I confronted her again, knowing I had the upper hand now. She was trying to gaslight me, playing the victim, acting like I was the crazy one. But I was done listening. I told her that I knew everything, the recordings, the texts, her lies, and that I couldn't keep pretending she was innocent. I told her I was leaving, that I wanted a clean break. She just sneered, calling me paranoid, saying I was overreacting, trying to make me feel guilty for accusing her. But I wasn't about to fall for her bullshit anymore. I knew the truth, and I knew I deserved better. So I gathered my things, packed up, and left that hellhole behind. It was like ripping off a Band-Aid, hurt like hell, but I knew it was necessary. As I drove away from that house, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with devastation. The woman I thought I knew had turned out to be someone else entirely. I'd always believed in honesty, love, loyalty, things that now felt so far away. All I could do was hope that someday I'd find a way to heal from this, but for now, I was just trying to survive the fallout. And that's what scares me the most, how deeply I let her manipulate my feelings, how I almost believed her lies because I wanted to. But I realized I had to stop clinging to what wasn't real anymore. I had to rebuild myself from the ground up, even if it meant starting over entirely. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust again, but I do know one thing. I'm done with her lies, her games, and her emotional betrayal. Now, it's just me, and I have to figure out what that means moving forward. The following weeks were a whirlwind of emotions and decisions. I managed to find a small apartment, nothing fancy, just enough space to breathe without her toxic presence. Every day, I felt the weight of everything I'd uncovered pressing down on me. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt even more was realizing how much I had ignored or excused over the years. The late nights, the secret texts, her changing attitude, all of it was like a slow poison I'd ignored because I loved her, because I wanted to believe in us. I started therapy myself. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about understanding how I let it happen, how I let her manipulate my feelings, my trust. I needed to rebuild my sense of self. The therapist helped me process the feelings of rage, sadness, and confusion. I learned that emotional infidelity can be just as damaging as physical cheating, especially when it's hidden beneath a false veneer of self-improvement and therapy. I also began pulling back from mutual friends and family. Some people knew about the issues, but nobody really knew how deep it went. I didn't want to talk about her anymore, at least not until I was ready. I'd been blindsided, and now I was just trying to find my footing again. Funny thing is, I kept questioning myself. Was I too controlling? Was I too insecure? But deep down, I knew the truth. I was betrayed, and that wasn't on me. One day, I decided to dig through her emails and messages again, just to make sure I hadn't missed anything. That's when I found a series of messages between her and Eli that were even more revealing. They weren't just flirtatious. They hinted she was planning to leave, to run away from the life we had. She'd been discussing their future, how she couldn't wait to be free. And what struck me was how she kept lying in her conversations with me, pretending everything was fine, that she was working on herself. It all made sense now. Her bitchy attitude, her dismissiveness, her quick lies. She was already looking for a way out. Her therapy sessions, her emotional affair with Eli, she was rewriting her own narrative, and I was just collateral damage. It's a weird feeling, being betrayed by someone you loved and trusted. It's a kind of grief I never expected. I kept asking myself how this happened, how she could be so callous, so indifferent. I thought I knew her, but now I see her as someone who was carefully constructing a lie, hiding her true feelings behind a mask of bitchy defiance and manipulation. I've come to accept that I can't change her, and I won't try anymore. The only thing I can do is focus on myself, rebuild, heal, and learn from this nightmare. I know I'll never fully understand her, but I do understand that I deserve honesty and respect, not a partner who's emotionally cheating, lying, and manipulating me behind my back. So I've set some boundaries. No more contact with her, no more looking back. I've started dating again, cautiously. I'm trying to remember what it's like to trust someone, but I also realize that it'll take time. The scars are real. The lessons are harsh. But I won't let this define me. I refuse to be the guy who gets played and stays stuck in bitterness. The biggest thing I've learned: never ignore the small signs. Don't dismiss your gut feeling. If someone's hiding things, it's usually because they're guilty of something. And most importantly, I won't tolerate emotional betrayal anymore. If I've learned anything from this nightmare, it's that love needs honesty. Without it, everything else crumbles. And I'll make damn sure I don't build anything fragile on a foundation of lies again. Now, looking back, I realize how much this experience has changed me, how it's forced me to confront the ugliness of betrayal and the resilience needed to move past it. I used to think love was about trust, about sharing everything with someone. Turns out, trust is something you earn daily, and if someone's capable of lying and manipulating you emotionally, it's better to walk away before you lose yourself completely. I've come to see that the most important thing I can do now is rebuild my sense of self and remember my worth. Bates' betrayal was a blow, but it also opened my eyes to the kind of boundaries I need to set, boundaries I ignored for far too long. I won't let someone play with my feelings or rewrite my reality again. I've learned that emotional fidelity is just as vital as physical fidelity, and I refuse to be with someone who is willing to manipulate that. Living through this has shown me that pain can be a powerful teacher. It's humbling, brutal even, but in some strange way, it's also freeing. I now know what I don't want in a partner: someone who lies, manipulates, and plays games with my feelings. It's made me realize how vital honesty and respect are, and I refuse to settle for anything less. I've started putting my life back together, focusing on my career, reconnecting with friends, rediscovering hobbies I'd abandoned. I'm no longer the naive guy who believed in fairy tales. I'm someone who's learned to stand up for himself. And while I still carry the scars, I also carry a new strength, confidence that I deserve better, that I can survive even the worst betrayals. To anyone out there dealing with something similar, I'll say this: trust your gut. Don't ignore the signs and don't make excuses for someone's lies. If someone is hiding things, they're probably guilty of something. And most importantly, don't be afraid to walk away. It hurts, yeah, it hurts like hell, but staying in a toxic situation will only break you further. In the end, I've learned that true love isn't just about feeling good. It's about honesty, loyalty, and mutual respect. If those are missing, everything else is just a house built on sand. I'm moving forward now, not perfect but stronger. And I know that someday I'll find someone who values me enough to be truthful, someone who won't push me into the shadows of their manipulations. Until then, I'll keep rebuilding, because I'm worth it.